بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Can you tell me about the Saddam Hussein trial in Iraq?
Yeah, so when the US went in, they formed the Iraqi Special Tribunal. That's what it was called at the time. Now it's called the Iraqi High Tribunal. So initially, this was an American project, a neo-imperialist project. So this tribunal was formed. Iraqis insisted that they wanted to try Saddam Hussein, not anyone else. And Iraqis insisted that the death penalty should be on the table, whereas international human rights groups said no to the death penalty. But Iraqis who have suffered under Saddam Hussein said no, we want the death penalty to be an option. So the tribunal took place with Iraqi judges, Iraqi lawyers, and Iraqi law being applied. So it started initially as part of the American neoliberalist project, but it then gradually turned into an Iraqi project where Iraqis wanted justice for everything that happened to them. Saddam has committed a whole range of crimes that the biggest question mark was, which one do we start with? And how can we organize these crimes to make them more manageable? So there's the Kuwait invasion, there's the Anfal campaign against the Kurds, there's the Dujail case, which is basically in the town of Dujail, some dissidents tried to assassinate Saddam when he was passing by. They failed, and then he massacred them.
The entire village or just the people that try to kill him?
The entire village. Saddam was ruthless. People still, Iraqis use humor to alleviate their pain. So they'll say, oh, he won't just kill you, he'll kill you, your family, and your entire clan, and the whole neighborhood, or the whole village, which was basically what he did, actually. He committed atrocious crimes against the Kurds in the north, and he used chemical gas against Kurds in Halabja, killing at least 5,000 people in one attack. He also killed Shia in the south for rebelling against him in 1991. So 1991 was a very bloody year in Iraq. This was right after the invasion of Kuwait. George Bush Sr. called on Iraqis to rebel against Saddam. And in his public statement, he said, we will support you. Rise against Saddam and we will support you. So Iraqis rose against Saddam, except the US did not support. They remained on the borders, stationed at the borders in Kuwait, saw Iraqis get massacred. Over 300,000 Iraqis were massacred within months, and the US did nothing, despite promising to provide support. So Kurds in the north, there was genocide practiced against them by Saddam Hussein, like I said, using biochemical weapons. In the south, many dissidents escaped to the marshlands, which is a beautiful part of the country. Unfortunately, it's experiencing climate change now and being dried out. But Saddam at the time sort of escalated this, actually. He drained the marshes to find the dissidents hiding there. So it was after the Iran war, after the invasion of Kuwait, Iraqis decided enough is enough, we're going to rise against him. But he massacred them. He bulldozed cities like Najaf and Karbala, which are holy cities for a lot of Shia Muslims. So the UN intervened, created a territory in the north called the Kurdish region and a no-fly zone to protect those people. Unfortunately, nothing was done to protect the rest of Iraq. Instead, people were collectively punished for Saddam's crimes by suffering under the UN-imposed sanctions. But going back to the tribunal, so that there is a list of crimes, including the Iran war as well, and to facilitate and speed things up, because there was a rise in terrorism by his supporters that the government at the time wanted to, I don't want to say crush, but wanted to quell. So they started with the Dujail trial first, with this case file, to speed up things, because the Anfal, the genocide against Kurds would take much longer. And so they wanted to rush it. They started with one of the smaller, quote unquote, smaller crimes to fast track. And then they sentenced him to death. In December 2005, he was executed.
I remember that day like it was yesterday.
Yes.
It was a big day.
And there was a video leak. So the plan was not to include any video because it would disturb the peace. Even if some people would find closure in it, it was still, not planned. There was someone recorded it by video, by cell phone, and the video leaked. So it created an outrage, and somehow it provided some closure to some people. So the reactions were very mixed. Many people who have lost loved ones to Saddam were happy that he was executed. It was a
Because
day
he
that
was
no one
real
thought.
humble. He was real humble before his execution. I watched that video. He looked very, he was very
So he put on a performance during his trial. And I used to teach a course called Popular Trials, and it's all about the public spectacle that public trials are. And Saddam Hussein certainly put on a performance during the trial. Every time his mic was turned on, he would go, instead of testifying or responding to the judge, he would go on a political speech or rant. And he was very uncontrollable in the courtroom. He and his brother Barzan Takriti, they were both very rowdy in the courtroom, and the judge struggled to control them. And Saddam was also very performative because during his trial, he would come in with the Quran in his hand, claiming to be this devout Muslim and try to gain public sentiment, empathy. But we all know that he lived a life that was far from what a Muslim life would demand. Um,
far,
you
far,
know, by
very far.
far, by far, he and his sons would rape women endlessly. There's nothing Muslim about that. They would
His
kill people.
I've
There's
heard
nothing
a
Muslim about that.
I've heard a story where his son saw a wedding and he really liked the bride. So he went and tried to like bribe the groom at first, and the groom refused, and then so he killed the groom and then raped his wife and then killed
Uday.
her.
So he had Uday and Qusay as his sons, and he had other daughters who are still alive today. Ragad is the more commonly vocal one till this day. She lives in Jordan. But
Does she support her dad or does she does not? Oh,
yes,
what? Wow.
yes, she supports her dad, and she has her followership and supporters who glorify Saddam and his crimes. But Uday, his son, was the one you just talked about. He was notorious for driving around girls' schools and picking someone, and she would disappear. So
Wow.
he was the manager of Iraq's Olympic team. And Iraq's football team or soccer team was actually a very powerful team in the region. But Uday had created this culture of fear for these athletes. If they lost a game, he would torture them. And he had these Iron Maidens. Do you know an Iron Maiden?
Mm-mm.
So it's a medieval tool of torture. It's like a coffin, and there are nails and rods going in. So you put someone in and press against them. So these athletes were quite tortured physically and emotionally. When you threaten them, if you don't win this match, you will be tortured. So inevitably, it lit a fire in them. It's like, oh my God, let's go in the first 5 minutes. Let's go now, because we will be tortured. And sometimes even if they won, he was a sadist. Saddam Hussein and his sons were sadistic. They were psychopaths. They had a thrill when they tortured people. And the reason we have so much evidence against them is because they love to videotape everything. So we have this array of evidence of their torture, of the crimes that they committed against people, because they love to have them recorded and watch them. They enjoyed torturing people. They enjoyed creating this culture of terror where people are always terrified. The surveillance system. Iraqis could not say anything, even within their own homes. People were so frightened of what would happen.
So do you believe, in your opinion, was the trial fair and just, and you think that was the correct trial?
I would say it was a fair trial. Mind you, this was the very first time in the whole Middle East where a president was put on trial. So this was unprecedented in the entire region, where a former dictator was put on trial. So he was very cruel, very cruel. This is why I'm often disturbed when people glorify him today. It's just very disturbing. They'll glorify him. Why? I'll tell you why. Because there's still sectarianism, anti-Shia sentiment in the Muslim world. And because he massacred Shia, there are people who still say, oh yeah, God bless Saddam, So if you hear someone say, God bless Saddam, you can tell that they have anti-Shia sentiment. They'll condemn Hitler, they'll condemn Bashar al-Assad, but they'll glorify Saddam. And it raises red flags when someone does that.
Yeah, absolutely.
He is the Hitler of Iraq. He massacred millions of people.
Yeah, Saddam is a terrible human being.